Christy, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 8 of my 2022 Valentine Card Series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Happy Hugs stamp set, and I am going to be using some pattern paper from the Watercolor Wishes Rainbow 6x6. So I went back and forth between this pink one and this reddish toned one. I ended up going with the reddish toned one because of that orange in there. I thought that would tie in really nicely with the fox. So my images are stamped on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I am going to start with the fox, and for him I'm using YR12, YR14, and YR18. This is my favorite combo for foxes. It has a little bit of a brownish undertone that I think works really well for them. It's a bit more natural than some of the brighter oranges. So I'm starting with the darkest shade, the YR18. That is the darkest, even though the YR14 has a darker cap. And I'm laying in my shadows. It's a little bit tricky since he's facing away from us, so I just had to kind of pick and choose where I wanted those shadows to go. I chose to put it on like the underside of his arm, but not underneath the rabbit's arm where that might also be casting a shadow, but I just thought that might make his belly area a little bit too dark. So I mainly kept the shadows on the right side of his body, but a little bit on the left as well, like the left ear and the left arm. Then I blended that out with the YR14, making sure to really go over the edge of the YR18 and pull that color into the mid-tone. And then I'm using the YR12 to fill all the rest of him in, except for his face and the tip of his tail, which I want to leave white. So I did do a second layer off screen just to save you some time in the video, and that made the blend just a little bit brighter. And then I used YR14 for the bird's beaks. And then for the white parts of the fox, I'm going to use E40 and E41. I just used a little E41 first, blended that out with the E40, and left the white cardstock as the highlight. And then I'm going to do the bunny next, and I ended up going with E000 and E00. These have kind of a peachy undertone to them, which I thought went well with that peach colored stripe in that pattern paper. So I started with the E00, and then I'm blending out with the E000, and then just like with the white parts of the fox, I'm going to leave the white cardstock showing for the white parts of the bunny, the highlights for the bunny. And then for the inside of his ears and his nose, I'm going to use R11 and R20, and I will also give them some rosy cheeks with that. I felt like the R11 was a little bit dark on those white areas, so I did bring in the R000 to soften that up even further, and I added some of that to the inside of the ears as well. And then I decided to use those shades for my birds. I just wanted something that would tie in. I felt like the coral color at the top, that reddish coral, would be a little too dark, so I went with the second stripe down, which is more of a pinky tone. So I just used those shades for them and kept the highlight on their bellies. And then I used the E40 for the bunny's tail and trimmed these images out with their matching dies. For the background, I took a piece of apricot cardstock and die cut that with the Quilted Heart Backdrop Portrait. So it's going to leave all of those little hearts on the back. So I'm using my Spellbinders tool to remove those really quick and easy, just running that over the back side of that die cut until all of those little hearts are removed. And then I will take the pattern paper that I use for my inspiration, and I'm going to die cut the giant sending big hugs out of the center of that. So I'll just tape that in place and run that through my die cutting machine, and then I can pull all of those pieces out. I would recommend maybe using a metal shim for this. I did not use it on this one, and there were a couple little bits like the inner parts of the ends that got a little stuck in there. So I did have to use like a craft knife to get some of those parts out. When I die cut it again, which you'll see in a minute, I did use a metal shim and I had a much easier time that time. So I definitely recommend using the metal shim if you've got one. So I die cut it a second time out of some more apricot cardstock, and that's just because I wanted to have it be, number one, a little bit more sturdy on the card front, since the background is a bit textured with those stitching details and the little heart cutouts. So I wanted it to be a little bit more sturdy and also just stand up a little bit more on the card, but I didn't want to die cut a bunch of foam tape or anything like that. So I just die cut it out of the same colored cardstock as that background piece, and I'm going to glue these two together. You could shift it a little bit to the left or the right and create a drop shadow. I decided not to do it for this one. I just adhered it straight on, so it's just has that bit of stability like I mentioned. So before that glue sets, I'm just making sure that everything is lined up correctly and that everything is well adhered. And then I also trimmed down another piece of that pattern paper that's just going to fit on the front of the card. I just used my paper trimmer. Now I want to stamp on the inside of my card before I start assembling, so I'm using another piece of apricot cardstock. I wanted everything to be really cohesive, and I'm stamping in Peachy Keen ink with the little squirrels and the sentiment that says "I'm here for you," plus a tiny little heart. And now I'm ready to start my assembly. So I'm going to take that pattern paper and adhere that to the front of my card. It is a standard A2 size card. It's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall with the top fold. And then I'm going to adhere that quilted heart backdrop. So I'm just going in between all of those little heart cutouts so that the edges will be really well adhered down. I want to make sure that everything is pressed down nicely, or you really won't see that pattern paper in the background. It needs to be really flush with that pattern paper for everything to show up nicely. So I'm dotting glue here and there in between all of those hearts, and then I'm going to press that down into place and make sure that that is really well secured so you can see that ombre effect of that pattern paper well through all of those little heart cutouts. Then I'm going to take that sentiment, the giant sending big hugs, and I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back of that as well. I'm using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue because it has that very thin nozzle, so I can get in all of those little letters very easily. And then I'm going to adhere that down in the center of my card, so just making sure that it is lined up well, and then I will press that down into place. And because I die cut it out of the same pattern paper in the same spot, all of the ombre effect should go from the hearts to the sentiment seamlessly. So I did add the eye over the larger big, the word big. I'm not going to bother over the eye in sending because the images that I'm adhering would have covered it up completely. So I adhered that down, and then I'm going to take my little hugging fox and bunny and put them over the eye in big. So you can see that that dot would have still been visible, so that's why I went ahead and adhered that one. But the birds are going to cover up where the dot would be on the small eye, so I didn't even bother attaching it. So once those are adhered, I'm going to take the small heart die from the Happy Hugs stamp set and die cut 5 little hearts out of that ombre pattern paper. Once again, I chose hearts from different sections so that they would kind of coincide with the background behind it. And I'm going to adhere those hearts in that same area. So I'm starting with this darker reddish coral one toward the top. And then next I'm going with the pink and the lighter coral ones, just trying to place them where they would be on that background as well, so everything still has that same ombre look. And next comes the apricot colored one, that little peachy colored one, and then at the very bottom of that pattern paper is orange. So that is where the last heart will go. And then I wanted to add a bit of sparkle to this card because it was looking a little bit plain for me, but this is for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge, which is clean and simple. And clean and simple are like the hardest cards for me to make. My brain just doesn't work that way. They're the most intimidating cards. So the least I could do was try to keep things very simple and monochromatic, but I still needed to have texture with those little heart cutouts and the stitching detail. I still needed to have a few pops of color with the brighter colored images, and then adding a little bit of sparkle too just made it feel a bit more like my style. So there's an up close look at all of that detail and another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. If you're interested in any of these products, I'll have everything listed and linked for you in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos from previous years of Valentine Card Series that I thought might inspire you. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.